I think it's safe to say that cinema in recent years has been on a consistent downslope. Regardless of the genre, we've seen significantly more flops than successes, which have been putting both production companies and theaters in a bind. Of the many contemporary shortcomings, we always hear about things like superheroes and quote-unquote family films frequently failing. But possibly the worst victim of modern dogshit word assembly by has-beens and never-wers has been science fiction. A genre once looked at as a tentpole of film has now been reduced to a lolcow associated with style over substance or a vehicle for modern identity politics and progressive ideology. With juggernauts like Star Wars, Star Trek, and Aliens falling by the wayside, the genre has been in desperate need for a franchise to step up. And back in 2021, it seemed our savior possibly had arrived.
It's time.
Dune is a series I'd heard about for years but had very little knowledge of. Based on a book series, a rather long one at that, and being a person who's not exactly an avid reader of novels, I just passed it up.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Sure, there was the 1984 David Lynch film and the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries in 2000, but predominantly Dune had remained an untapped well just waiting for the right moment to pull from. Part 1 received both praise for its visuals and general quality as well as some criticism for its pacing and the feeling of being bogged down by world building. Nevertheless, it was still a solid film in its own right, which showed enough sparks of potential that people were interested in seeing if the sequel could catch fire. However, even with positive word of mouth, many like myself passed on the first outing. Either opting to wait till the sequel was closer, also I'm pretty jaded about IPs getting destroyed, or till the hype train barreled past them hard enough to sweep them up. The combination of a lack of competition within the year as well as the genre as a whole has created a perfect storm of anticipation for both hardcore fans and casuals alike. But does it meet the lofty expectations? Let's take a look. And don't worry, I know a lot of people out there are very excited about this film, so I'll keep it very brief and light on spoilers. But if you prefer to avoid all plot details, please jump to this timestamp right here. Our story picks up in the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Arrakis. House Atreides lies in ruins, slaughtered by their sworn enemies, the Harkonnen. Despite being outsiders, Paul and Jessica have been accepted into a small band of Fremen, and have already begun staging clandestine attacks on Harkonnen scout teams. Employing some cunning tactics, the Fremen ambush the Harkonnen, which the latter temporarily dodged through the clever usage of flight.
They fly now! They fly now!
But eventually succumb to the trap. After dispatching the scouts and turning them into what I can best describe as Harkonnen smoothies, the Fremen take a moment to let everyone see a glimpse of why you really came. The sandworms. By the way, what the fuck is up with those goddamn popcorn buckets? Who wrote off on those freaky fleshlights? Despite proving their worth, the Atreides are still viewed by many as outsiders and treated with hostility, even being accused of acting as spies to infiltrate the Fremen. This is not the only antipathy, as tensions have begun to grow between Paul and his mother Jessica, as the latter persists in spreading the Bene Gesserit prophecies of the Messiah, tales which Paul himself shuns as he's being viewed by many as a false prophet. Meanwhile, back on Arrakeen, Glossu Rabin grows increasingly frustrated with his troops' inability to deal with what he deems as simple desert folk, becoming progressively more erratic in his attempts to stamp them out, willing to sacrifice his own men in the process.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Which has led to a growing lack of faith from his uncle the Baron back on Giddy Prime. This mistrust triggers a silent shift in the ranks of the Harkonnen family, placing Fade Rotha in favor of his uncle Vladimir.
Kill them all.
Paul continues to learn the ways of the Fremen, experiencing firsthand their rituals and deeper understanding of their culture, which includes a fanatical devotion to water, going so far as to recycle every bit within the bodies of the living and dead alike. In order to be fully accepted, Jessica is given a choice. Either drink the water of life and replace their reverend mother, or be executed.
Well, that sucks!
Placing her in the unenviable position of retaining the knowledge, pain, and emotion of all those who came before her. A responsibility she reluctantly agrees to despite being pregnant. On the other hand, Paul must prove himself in a very different way, by going through trials to learn the various survival skills required for Arrakis, ranging from an understanding of the harsh climates and deadly animals, to how to utilize their technology. With Chani acting as his Apollo Creed,
There is no tomorrow!
he is slowly but surely able to achieve the level of expertise required. After a mostly successful sabotage sortie, which only results in approximately a 92% casualty rate.
You see, killbots have a preset kill limit. Knowing their weakness, I sent wave after wave of my own men at them.
Paul has proven his worth and is celebrated by the Fremen with the secret Sitch name of Usul, which means base of the pillar, and takes the common name of Muad'Dib, the name of the desert mouse which is held in high esteem of the Fremen. As Paul and his Fremen brethren successfully undermine the efforts of the Harkonnen, the legend of Muad'Dib grows with the help of Jessica's increasing psychosis and emphasis on converting the non-believers of northern Arrakis. A mission which may be self-serving. Despite his reputation increasingly preceding him, Paul for the most part stays true to himself. His budding relationship with Chani becomes a focal point in his life as the two continue to grow more and more fond of one another. Even after achieving so much, there's still one task left for Paul to 100% establish his place within the Fremen, and that is to successfully become a Worm Rider, the final rite of passage for all Fremen warriors. Seeing as how they released this scene weeks ago for marketing, I'm fairly certain that even those of you who haven't seen the movie yet are familiar with it. But on the off chance you aren't, let me just tell you that Paul indeed succeeds in his final trial in spectacular fashion by bagging the largest phallic symbol ever.
It's just an extension of your penis.
Oh, I wish!
Having convinced the Northerners of his worth and possible messiahhood, can he unify the tribes of the South and stop the Harkonnen within the confines of the 3-hour runtime? Or are we destined to have a part 3 in about 4 years?
This is just the beginning.
Often when a film is criticized for lacking depth or coherence, word assemblers will lean on themes as a crutch to defend their hackney attempt at storytelling even as critics cut it off at the knees. But with Dune, the themes are well balanced and woven into the very fabric of the narrative tapestry without sacrificing quality. Being a fish out of water, forced to adapt to a situation you're ill prepared for, accepting one's fate, and the dangers of dogmatic religious fundamentalism are key to the story, as are the very human pitfalls of the thirst for power, betrayal, and the inevitable corruption which comes with them. For me, the most important themes explored are the Machiavellian concepts. The crux of the entire diegesis relies on exploring society's tendency to follow those with charisma. And the age-old question, is it better to be a leader who is loved or feared?
Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
You know, I've never really been a Timothée Chalamet guy. Scrolling through his filmography, the few things I've seen him in, I've just never really viewed him as a leading man. It's probably not helped by the fact that he perpetually looks like he's 14 years old. But I gotta say he really stepped it up with this one. Even compared to part 1, you could see that he's better connected with the character of Paul Atreides as he has a more commanding presence in this outing. Hell, toward the end of the film, he had me so amped up I was ready to join the Fremen and fight for the liberation of Arrakis. Ah, yes, I just wanted to let you know that I'll be handing in my resignation and moving on from film reviews. Well, this dude just kind of showed up with a knife and started screaming, and I just feel compelled to follow him to the ends of the earth for some reason. What do you mean I'm contractually obligated to finish the review? You fucking Harkonnen sympathizer. If there's one complaint I have about Timmy, it's that I wish he would have put on a bit more muscle for the role, as he doesn't look very convincing as a combatant at certain points. It's not the most egregious example I've ever seen. That honor still belongs to you, Finn Jones from Iron Fist. But I think it would have been cool if as the film went on he became more imposing. I mean, if it worked for Tobey Maguire, why not here?
Yeah. Big change.
Opposite Paul Atreides is Chani, the young Fremen warrior, mentor, and eventual lover of the Messiah. Played by Zendaya, an actress who seems to be attempting to wrestle the world record for longest consecutive RBF away from Aubrey Plaza. She represents the only casting I'm not a huge fan of, as I just don't get her appeal. She keeps getting thrown into these love interest roles despite being a solid 4 at best. She does seem to have expanded her range slightly since playing MJ in Spider-Man, as she doesn't sound like every line she's saying is for the first time ever. But she's still horribly out of place here, and sometimes it's a bit hard to take her seriously in the role, as the love story lacks any chemistry between the two actors. Though I will give credit where it's due, she never comes off as the insufferable girl boss that I feared she'd be. I'm not really sure what these casting directors see in her outside of the ambiguity of her race, which ticks a lot of boxes on the diversity checklist. But seeing as how she has another film coming out later this year and then likely the sequel to this, and who knows how many other projects are in the works, it would seem I'm fated to review her movies for the rest of my life.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
Okay, I may get a little flack for this one, and possibly I'm just a prisoner of the moment from her showing up at the premiere looking like every fantasy I ever had in high school, but the antithesis of everything Zendaya has got to be Rebecca Ferguson. She has the tall task of trying to convey a woman slowly slipping into madness after only doing what she needed to in order to protect her son, but gradually shifting toward possibly more malevolent motivations. It's never easy to play a character who loses his or herself completely mid-narrative, but she nails it and is really able to walk the line perfectly between hero and villain. Due to the nature of an ensemble cast, sometimes characters you wish would get more screen time unfortunately don't, and Dune Part 2 is no exception. There were a few I would have loved to see expanded a bit for various reasons. First being Austin Butler as Fade Rotha Harkonnen. This guy really shines in the moments he was given, sometimes quite literally. Often when an actor is asked to portray a menacing sociopath, it has the unintended result of coming off as comedic. But that isn't the case here, as he's able to send chills down your spine with a simple glance. To say that Butler has shed his Disney Channel and Nickelodeon roots would be an understatement, and this role only further solidifies that. You can't talk about one Harkonnen brother without mentioning the other, Glasu Rabin, played by Dave Bautista. His screen time has been severely reduced from the first film, which leaves a bit to be desired. But when he gets a shot, he really sells the fact that he's coming up short and disgracing his family. I'm actually pretty happy to see him playing a character on the opposite end of the spectrum from Drax the Destroyer, as it proves he's not a one-trick pony and is taking the craft of acting seriously. Occasionally, the first time you see an actor, you know you love the guy. Josh Brolin is a star that has slowly but surely become a favorite of many, myself included. Whether it be No Country for Old Men or Deadpool 2, he has a near unmatched ability to steal the show. Which makes it all the more upsetting that he's so severely downplayed in this one. He gets maybe half a dozen scenes, but at least they're fairly memorable and give Brolin a chance to flex. Lastly, I really wish Christopher Walken got more screen time as Emperor Shaddam IV. Okay, I'll admit that this one is just me being selfish because I find Christopher Walken trying to play such a serious role hilarious. And he's not exactly who I would have picked to play it, but I mean, come on, he's Christopher fucking Walken.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
The most insane part of the Dune 2 experience is that this nearly 3-hour movie moves quicker than some significantly shorter ones I've seen recently. When I realized that 90 minutes had elapsed, I was genuinely shocked as it felt like half that.
The pacing of this film is terrible.
No, get the fuck out of here, poorly recorded disembodied me from approximately 9 months ago. Denis Villeneuve, New Wave, you know what, I'm just gonna call in some backup on this one. Yo, uninspired, how the fuck do you pronounce this dude's name?
It's pronounced Denis Villeneuve.
There we go, what he said. He seems to have cracked the code on how to quickly move through the development of a story and then gracefully slow down at important moments. It's the cinematic equivalent of driving to look at Christmas lights. You speed to the first house and slow down just enough to take in the display, then roll out and on to the next. Even though it never feels like a slog, there are portions where I wish for greater detail and more from certain characters. Despite being eminently satisfied with the pacing, I'd be remiss if I didn't call it like I see it. Film likely isn't the best medium for this adaptation. The more I think about it, the more I feel this would simply be better as a Game of Thrones-esque series, minus the completely botched ending, which would give the side plots more time to gestate. It's strange to think that a film with a reported budget of $190 million would be considered below average. But the sad reality nowadays is that it's extremely common for them to blow it up to $300 million. Damn! With Dune, I can honestly say that I believe the budget was used to its fullest. Many reviewers, myself included, often complain about an over-reliance of CGI in modern cinema. Not everything needs to be CGI. But after seeing this, I think my opinion has changed. Dune proves it's not about how much CGI is used. It's about the quality and care that actually goes into making sure it's used at the right times. It's been a long time since I've seen practical and computer effects blended so masterfully, creating a true visual spectacle the viewer can get lost in. I really want to tip my hat to the commitment of all those involved to actually go out into the desert and film these scenes. It would be so much easier and safer to simply import sand into a soundstage.
I don't like sand.
But sometimes you just need to throw caution to the wind to achieve the best results. By filming on location, the world of Arrakis feels authentic, unlike some other deserts in recent history. The sound mixing can be spotty at times, and there were a few pieces of dialogue I missed along the way, but it's so few and far between it's forgivable, especially when the big action set pieces rumble your chair. And sound is such an important aspect to the story itself, seeing as how it can cause vaginal death from under the sands. They really paid attention to the effects to make them just right. Utilizing microphones buried in the sand to get the actual sound that the thumper would make is just another example of the tender love and care the production staff placed on even the smallest details. With the amazing quality of the visuals and the slightly flawed but solid sound, I say this with 100% sincerity, that if you have the option, you need to see this in IMAX, whether it be waiting a little longer to get a ticket or traveling a distance to the nearest theater that has one. Do yourself a favor and see this film the way it was meant to be. Trust me, you won't regret it.
No regrets.
In the end, Dune Part 2 represents a huge step back into the cultural zeitgeist for the science fiction genre. In an era where the normalization of empty theaters has essentially become a meme, stepping into an IMAX where every seat was packed with excited fans left me wondering if perhaps I was hallucinating. As I sat waiting for the film to begin, the person immediately to my left turned to me and asked if I had read the books, excited to talk about a franchise he clearly had a reverence for. After explaining that I hadn't, he proceeded to explain as much as he could about the history in the brief time we had before the film began. Then he sat in utter silence, eyes glued to the massive screen, as did everyone else. For nearly 3 hours, not so much as a word was uttered by anyone around me, as they remained enthralled by the cinematic wonder in front of them. As the film closed and the credits rolled, the crowd cheered and the silence was broken. For the next 10 minutes, people stayed in the theater talking about what they had just seen. That same guy from earlier couldn't wait to ask me my opinion and chat about the event we had just partaken in. Which is exactly what it was. Being 35 at the time of this recording, I did not get to experience the craze that was Star Wars when it first came out. An event that many point to as the shift in Hollywood's view of science fiction and the genesis of the sci-fi blockbuster. Though I may have missed its birth, one thing I might one day be able to say is that I witnessed its revival, as Dune 2 truly lives up to the hype. You may be asking yourself, what exactly did I say to the guy next to me after all was said and done? Well, I turned to him and I said, you know what? I think I might just go invest in a few of the books. Which to me is the highest compliment one could pay to any adaptation. And if that's not enough to convince you to get out as soon as you can and see this amazing adaptation of artistic awesomeness, I'm not sure anything I could possibly say would do the trick. Guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is more sandworm.